First things first. For the next 40 minutes, I hope that you and I, all of us here, gonna talk about thing that I love a lot, which is measurement, and basically how we can use different measurement techniques to optimize your user acquisition strategy. A little bit of housekeeping. We have 40 minutes. We have a little bit of time of QA, but if you have more questions, I'm not running anywhere, so I will be happy to answer all of them because a lot of juicy content. Who are you, or basically whom I would love to see in this room, is people who work in user acquisition, people who work with apps and games, who work preliminary with subscription monetization model in small and medium-sized companies, because, well, when you're a big company or an enterprise, very likely you have way more resources to do this type of analysis. And, well, who am I and why should you listen to me? It's very, very short and simple. I'm Nat, or Natalia, depending how you would like to call me. I've been in the subscription business for the last 5 years, and I'm all about user acquisition of all different sorts of kinds, but mainly it's paid UA. I started with Google, Apple Search Ads, did some Twitter when it was Twitter, not X, and now a lot of work is Facebook. And what I'm doing right now, I'm trying to make people's life fabulous, because, well, we work for Fabulous. That's the name of the company. So what we're going to do, we're going to deconstruct what is measurement for user acquisition for games and apps, and what are traditional things that people do, and what are the alternatives that you can think of when doing your kind of analysis. First things first, let's talk about hard things about measurement. Number one, it is a very, very broad topic. Everyone who sees a number thinks they're good at measurement. Somebody knows the difference between CPI and IPM, and if they know what is CPA, that, well, of course, I have a strong opinion why you should do this or that. So metrics are everywhere. Many people have opinions, but it's not always that easy. The other thing is that measurement can become misleading. Why? Because if you choose wrong numbers or choose wrong metrics without seeing the bigger picture, the numbers you chose can lead you to a very wrong story, which is different from reality. I know people who really care about CPIs without looking at a different part of the mirror, which is the revenue per install. And, well, decreasing CPIs can lead to actually worse ROAS. And, well, don't let the numbers hide the bigger picture. It's not enough just to talk about one specific metric and fine-tuning it and iterating on it, rather than seeing what is happening on macro, nano, and micro levels. And numbers should support you and help you to tell a bigger story, a more beautiful story, not numbers in sake of numbers. So the biggest part of my presentation is about revenue. And, well, what is revenue? Like, how we calculate revenue is always about ROAS, right? And ROAS is so easy, isn't it? It's revenue divided by spend multiplied by 100%. But is it that easy? What revenue? Revenue, is it cohort revenue? Is it absolute revenue? Is it revenue minus refunds? Is it revenue minus app store fee, commissions, maybe chargebacks? So even such little or small formula can have a lot of caveats, a little bit of rocks underneath. So the other thing is that ROAS is a percentage metric, and it's so easy to become fooled by numbers, because percentages look nice, but you should always back up a percentage metric with something which is absolute. What I really love to look at is profit loss, but, well, it's not the audit finance profit loss, because we do not take OPEX. We're talking about strict how much money we spent, how much money we got from a given paid campaign. So, well, let me pause for a minute to breathe, but you think, which one of those two campaigns delivers better results in terms of net profit? 10 seconds to think. Anyone think about that the first one is better? One person in the back, good. Anyone thinks the second one is better? 2 hands, okay, I see engagement in the audience. That's good, but the truth is they're identical. So thanks for everyone who didn't raise their hand, because, well, you were true, maybe if you're listening. But the point is, net profit how much money we made, not how many percentages we made, is identical, just because we are talking about different scale size of campaigns. And actually, this is a very real story for a very medium-sized normal company when you have Apple search ads with beautiful results and Facebook with mediocre results. But has anyone scaled Apple search ads to 6 digits per month? People, heroes? Do you? Ooh, I need to talk to you guys. Good. So the other thing we must know, we already know, percentages is good, but always back up with something absolute. And now the other thing, which is cohorts. This is this fancy word that not everyone people like, but why is this important? When you ask yourself how much money I made last week, it's not a good question, especially in the subscription business, because there is such thing as second charges, third charges, charges from people who forgot about your app 4 years ago, but you still get money. Well, and this is why you should always be super precise about how you ask. How much money I made during first 7 days of user lifetime by use the cohort which I acquired this week or that week. So this is an example. See how your numbers evolve. Numbers are made up, but the story is very simple. We have 2 different cohorts, and it may look that like, well, TikTok is better because we get more money, but in terms of the first 8 weeks, they are basically equalized, and then we see that Facebook brings more money in the long run. So chart like this, if you have, for example, monthly subscriptions, this is very real, because for the first week, people get charged, then some people ask for a refund, then some other people get charged, and you see. So see your numbers evolving. And whoa, this is what I love and hate, because those are projections. So you have to use projections if you want to make good decisions in the long run, but you should build them very, very carefully. If you overestimate, you may run out of money, which is bad. If you underestimate, you may undercapitalize all the spend you have, and then your competitors will use the market share that you have. So good projections should be very close to real data, and this is super important to do the sanity checks. For example, in August, we projected the 12 months revenue at this level, and we were 12% above. Let's fine-tune our model to make sure it doesn't happen. So yeah, let's talk about money. We all love money. And when it comes to money and revenue and ROAS, there is blended, there is paid modeled, and paid real. I'm not going to talk about the second and the third. I'm going to talk only about blended. And I will tell you why. Because, unfortunately, especially on iOS, we do have to say goodbye to deterministic attribution. I hope we know the difference between deterministic and probabilistic. Scan is already here. It has been here for the last 2 years. Android's privacy sandbox is hanging in the air like an elephant in the room. So it's going to happen sometime soon. We don't know when, but it's going to be there. The very sad truth is that management usually hates blended. And why is this happening? Because people who give you money, basically like management or like investors, they want to know the exact return on investment. For example, we spent 300,000 on Facebook. I want 400,000 back, period. But this is also very true when there are financial challenges and people are super cautious how they spend their money. But, well, in fact, only blended numbers are real. Why? Because every projection can change over time. And imagine a situation you went to your boss and say, like, we made 400,000 from Facebook. I am super sure in our estimates. And then it turns out there was a mistake and you made 3 times less. Imagine how you're going to feel when you're like, somebody's going to get fired. I hope not. So blended are the numbers which exist, and you have to communicate very clearly that these are the things that we can be confident, and these are the things where we can actually use for long-term planning. So blended lives in different places. The most important, it lives in stores, and then it lives in MMPs, analytics solutions providers, or revenue management providers. Why there is a little blank between them? Because those are 2 different sources. What I mean by this, stores have one source of truth, And MMP, analytics, and revenue, they are all interconnected. And if something is fucked up in your MMP, very likely you will also notice it in your amplitude and your revenue cut, wherever. So it sometimes happens, it happened in my life already 4 times, is that numbers do not match. And you're screwed. And it's not only the financial team which is screwed when numbers do not match, it's also you as a marketer who is screwed because you cannot make good decisions and you cannot tell what your ROAS is. Go and find your discrepancy. And whom should you trust? You should always trust stores in situations like this because stores are the ones who give you money. As simple as this. It's not Adjust who pays you. It's not AppsLawyer. It's not a revenue cut. Collect the numbers. Go to your dev team, go to your analytics team, and try to figure out what happened. In one of cases in my career, it happened that after the Adjust SDK was updated, we lost 40% of revenues. So the good part, we lost tracking in Adjust, but we didn't lose money. So nobody got fired. And now let's talk about blended revenue and how to deconstruct it. So I hope by now you understand that the most reliable source when you analyze your campaign is blended revenue. But you want to say like, well, that's everything everywhere at once. Not gonna be good. But you can always eat as an elephant by little pieces. So, for example, we have organic, paid, social, influencer, and email. You cannot use deterministic tracking in your paid campaigns. Thanks, Apple. But you have your own channels. So channels is where you can actually go and put a link, and then you can actually bring your people, bring your users anywhere you want them to be. So for cases where you can use your own links, go and do some web payments or use some kind of tracking links that can help you to get the part. I know for sure those people came from email campaign about Thanksgiving. So the less the better. What it means that from our huge portion of revenue, we can already get rid of, for example, people who are following us on Instagram. I mean, like not get rid of people, but we can diversify people who are going to follow us on Instagram and everyone who goes to our account from social media activities and email marketing. The other thing, if you do run influencer campaigns, try to fall in love with waves. And why it works? Because influencers are way more harder to measure for the simple reason that not everyone clicks under influencers' links, like go and check this or that. There is some kind of organic uplift effect, and it's very, very hard to measure. So it makes way more sense to create and engineer your campaigns in a way that you know for sure that during this week we had no activities, and during that week we had 4 influencers that generated 25% uplift to all of our blended activities. And yeah, web links can be also added. It's kind of the paid channel, but where Apple does not have control over the links influencers are using. So what do we have now? The simple is genius. We have paid and organic. I hope so far so good. And maybe you have more complex system, but let's keep it as it is. And we have one step to get things even better and even easier to understand. It's something which can we call organic baseline, and it's something which we call paid organic uplift, or actually cannibalization. So what is the organic baseline? This is the graph. You can see 2 lines, the line with how much you spent on paid activities and how much revenue you are getting in total, so blended revenue. So what we are seeing is that in the first 4 weeks, when we had no spend, we were making approximately like 400 of euros per week. Then we start our paid campaign and we see that blended revenue increased significantly. So the dotted black line is the running average of previous weeks. And we do see what our revenue could look like if we didn't launch any paid activities. So it actually helps you to understand and improve the effectiveness of your measurement and estimations. On top of this, we can see if there is something which we call organic uplift. So here we have a different way of looking at things. The blue line is overall revenue. The red line is paid revenue, but of course those are estimates. And the situation in the story is the follows. How much money we had we were making when there were no campaigns. The dotted line shows what our organic revenue would look like if we had no paid activities. And the real one shows how much money we made. So what we can see that in this beautiful example, the launch of paid campaigns also increased our organic numbers, which actually very rarely happens, but still this is the case from your textbooks. I made up those numbers myself, just in case. So very, very brief summary. It's very easy to do. It's very easy to interpret because you just have your numbers. You do not need to be a data analyst or data scientist to do it. Excel is your best friend, and it really helps you to see the picture. What would have happened if you haven't done this? But it has a lot of drawbacks. First of all, you cannot do it when you have always on activities. Many people run campaigns, for example, all of the time. One little exclusion, if you run Apple Search Ads, you can ignore it. Just because Apple Search Ads is a placement that doesn't provide a lot of organic uplifts. I haven't seen it anywhere. If you have a different opinion, please go and talk to me. If you see, I am very connected to Apple Search Ads in a way. But the other thing is that this type of lifts, they are applicable on the geo and platform level. If you run something in France, there are little chances it will work on Indonesia. So be aware of this as well. And different channels create different uplifts or cannibalization. So that's not all. We still have a lot to cover, but I hope you're good. Let's take a breather, and then we're going to talk about costs. Let's continue talking about money. Now we have Yoda. So cost per something. You can put anything you want under the part which is called per something. And the first and the most obvious one is CPM. We all love talking to CPMs, and everyone talks about CPMs, from people who work on television to people who work with search campaigns for keywords. But it's really, really useless without bigger context. Why it's useless? Because CPMs are different between networks, which is obvious, but it is very different between placements. So Facebook is the best example. When you run Facebook Advantage Plus campaigns, you will have different CPM on Instagram Reels, Instagram homepage, Facebook Reels, Facebook homepage, audience network. And this is why when you see, oh my God, our CPMs increased 4 times, we're screwed. You may be not. You may be actually good, because very likely you just ended up with Instagram Reels, which tend to bring more high quality users. The other thing, CPMs are different from creative types. If you have images, CPMs are lower, but the previous session was about also how clicks can be misleading, and the same happens with images. People can just think it's a beautiful video, a beautiful image, click on it, and voila, it's an ad. So CPMs, just CPMs, oh my God, my CPMs have increased. I wouldn't say, oh my God, I would say like, what have changed? What are other metrics that changed? The other thing, which is cost per click. And again, it's kind of useless until you see the bigger picture, and it can be good for 2 particular circumstances: Apple Search Ads and Google Search Ads. Google Search Ads, I'm not talking UAC, because you do not have any visibility on keywords, because thanks Google, but you have still Google standard search campaigns. And it actually shows you how competitive a keyword is, how competitive the market is. For example, let's take really beautiful keyword, ADHD. Well, it is very applicable for many applications that help to solve this kind of issue. But you see that it's very, very competitive. Why? Because, for example, the cost per click is very high and CPM is very high. On the other hand, you can have a keyword iPhone, and you will see it very cheap CPMs, but like, whom will you market with the keyword iPhone? If you have maybe iPhone wallpapers or custom stuff of this. So keywords, CPCs are friends. Socials and CPCs are not that much, for the reason we just discussed with CPMs. Depending on the placement, keywords will be different. One exclusion here is that on TikTok, where you have the main placement, which is the feed, CPCs may be okay, but also TikTok is testing different placements, the search results as well. But something which I love, which I really love a lot, is cost per action. And action can be anything. It can start from registration, start onboarding, finish onboarding, add your credit card details. And again, this is why you have to be very precise when you say our CPA is increased. When you talk to your product team, when you talk to your monetization team, when you talk to yourself, just like I sometimes do, because you need to be specific. And like in our company, we do not have CPAs. We have cost per trial, cost per purchase, cost per subscription, cost per upsell, etc., etc. And it's always good to counter your CPAs till the revenues, which are generated by the same action. So we see basically like a weights. We paid so much, we gathered that much. And one thing which I love about everything is something per mile. But we're not gonna run, we're just gonna check how different metrics go other way around from an action to the first eyesight. So installs per mile. All the DSPs will tell you that the higher install per mile, the better the creative. And it is, because it is something that shows how relevant your ad is to the person, because they do the desired action, they download the app. And IPMs is a very strong metric for finding the good creatives. So the other thing, IPMs itself shouldn't be just taken out of the vacuum. You have to always keep in mind that if somebody installs your app, it doesn't mean they will end up paying. Maybe that's the group of people who are just like to install apps and look at them and do nothing, not going to pay. So IPMs, they should be compared within the same setup. Facebook, campaign optimized towards trials, and then you have 5 creatives. The one that has higher IPM tends to be good. And we will also notice that higher IPM usually leads to higher spend for the given creative. It's a very strong indicator for the systems to generate more impressions for a given creative with a higher IPM. But we never compare it between campaign types and per networks. On top of that, one of the metrics which I love about everything is SPM, or subscriptions per mile, or you can call it trials per mile, because it is actually something that connects the upper funnel with impressions and the bottom of the funnel with your desired action. If you are making subscriptions, then we want to see how many people ended up doing the action that we want them to do, give us money, from the people who saw our ad. And why it's good? It helps to show then, I would call it product network fit. Maybe a lot of people are seeing, but they are not converting. But as you may already guessed, we do not compare things. We do not compare things between different networks just because the costs may be very different. So you have, again, 2 charts. And it's really good to see that, for example, we are seeing that over the last year, we actually mastered our TikTok creatives because more and more people are doing the action we want. And even though the IPM is low, but maybe we are paying little for every view. While on the other hand, the ASA looks like it's great and interesting and sexy, but things are going down. And what can be the reason? At least 2 super obvious reasons. One, very likely we are just scaling. And it's normal that more people see the ad, then we are tapping into audience which is less and less interested. But the other one is if we are having the same spend levels and the cost, like subscription per mile go down, that maybe there is slightly worse purchasing power of people, or maybe your product has evolved to the way that people do not find it interesting to go and subscribe and buy it. So this is the main and the most important slide. Working with measurement and understanding your measurement is like a first date. You have to be careful. You have to be very thinking about details all of the time. Think about context and do not give up if something doesn't work. Ask more questions, listen to your data, and tell a compelling story. And now it's time for questions. And if you have more questions, please show me your metrics. I am always here for you to talk and to share the knowledge. So thank you, guys.